On Christmas Eve, beneath glowing lights and forced smiles, a man stood frozen as another woman slapped his wife, right in front of their children. He didn't stop it. He didn't speak. Instead, he called his wife a burden. He allowed the humiliation to echo through the very home she helped build. What he didn't know, what he never bothered to learn, was that the quiet woman he dismissed didn't just endure his silence. She owned the power behind his pride. And months later, the same door he walked through with arrogance would shut him out and finally open for her. Elaine Connor was always introduced last, if she was introduced at all. Nicholas would shake hands, flash his practice smile, talk about deals and growth and numbers that impressed the room. Elaine stood one step behind him, holding her purse with both hands, nodding politely, her voice barely heard over his confidence. At home, she was the glue that kept everything from cracking. She cooked meals that arrived on the table right on time. She remembered birthdays, school meetings, quiet fears their children whispered late at night. When Nicholas came home angry, she listened. When he dismissed her thoughts, she swallowed her words. When insults were wrapped in jokes, she smiled to keep the peace. To the outside world, Elaine looked invisible. A loyal wife, a simple woman, the kind people assumed wouldn't understand business. Nicholas certainly believed that. He loved telling anyone who would listen how he had built his company from nothing, how every risk, every late night, every success belonged to him alone. When someone glanced at Elaine, he would laugh and say, "She lets me handle the important stuff." Elaine never corrected him. What no one noticed was how carefully she listened when numbers were discussed at the dinner table, how she remembered names, dates, contracts, and promises Nicholas forgot the moment they stopped serving him. She saw how money moved, how decisions were made, how pride blinded him to danger. Silence, for Elaine, was never confusion. It was patience. While others mistook her calm for weakness, she was observing everything. Every flaw in the foundation Nicholas bragged about, every crack hidden behind his arrogance. She wasn't standing behind him because she was small. She was standing there because she was learning. And one day, all of it would matter. Elaine had learned early that real power didn't announce itself. Long before she became Nicholas Connor's quiet wife, she was simply Elaine Harper, the daughter of a man who believed discipline mattered more than dominance, and legacy mattered more than applause. Her father, William Harper, built his logistics empire from the ground up with calloused hands and a mind that never stopped calculating 3 steps ahead. He didn't chase attention. He chased stability. Growing up, Elaine watched trucks roll in before dawn and leave long after sunset. She learned how supply chains worked before she learned algebra. At the dinner table, her father spoke about margins, contracts, and risk, not to impress but to teach. When she asked questions, he didn't laugh or dismiss her. He explained, patiently, thoroughly, as if it mattered that she understood, especially because one day she would. When William Harper fell ill, the doctors spoke in cautious tones. Time, they said, was no longer generous. In those quiet months, he put his affairs in order with the same precision that built his company. Lawyers came and went. Papers were signed. Decisions were made without drama. And one of those decisions would change everything. William didn't hand the company to loud executives or distant relatives. He placed controlling ownership into a family trust, structured carefully, quietly, and irrevocably. The beneficiary was Elaine, not because she demanded it, but because she earned it. Elaine never spoke of it, not to friends, not to colleagues, and certainly not to Nicholas. By the time she met Nicholas Connor, she had already learned how easily power could distort people. Nicholas was charming then, ambitious, driven, endlessly confident. He spoke of dreams and expansion and building something bigger than himself. Elaine believed him. More than that, she admired his hunger. So when Nicholas was offered a senior executive role within her father's company, through channels he never questioned, Elaine said nothing. She let him believe it was his brilliance that opened doors. She watched him rise quickly, fueled by praise and opportunity, unaware of the safety net quietly beneath him. After her father's death, Nicholas assumed the company would one day be his. He spoke of it casually, as if ownership were inevitable. Elaine listened. She nodded. She grieved her father in silence, while her husband planned a future he didn't truly control. She could have corrected him. She didn't. Elaine chose love over power. Every time, when Nicholas made risky decisions, she softened their impact behind the scenes. When deals teetered on collapse, she intervened through the trust's quiet authority, never signing her own name, never stepping into the spotlight. She protected him from consequences he didn't even know existed. She believed humility would save their marriage. She believed if she didn't threaten his ego, he would never turn against her. But the more she protected Nicholas, the smaller he made her. As his confidence grew, his respect shrank. He began speaking over her, then around her, then about her, as if she weren't in the room. Her silence became a joke. Her restraint became proof, in his mind, that she was irrelevant. The night of the Christmas Eve humiliation didn't come out of nowhere. It was simply the moment Elaine could no longer ignore what she had been denying for years. Standing there, in her own home, watching another woman raise her hand against her, while Nicholas did nothing, Elaine felt something inside her shift. Not anger, not shock, clarity. She realized she had spent years protecting a man who would never protect her. She had hidden her strength for someone who fed on weakness. She had believed love meant shrinking, when love was never supposed to require disappearance. That night, after the guests left and the children were asleep, Elaine didn't cry. She didn't argue. She didn't demand apologies. She went to her study. She opened a locked drawer. Inside were documents she hadn't touched in years, trust agreements, ownership structures, legal authority that bore her name alone. Papers that proved a truth Nicholas never imagined. He wasn't the owner of the empire he bragged about. He was an employee. And for the first time since her father's death, Elaine stopped protecting him from that reality. She didn't act out of revenge. She acted out of necessity, because humility hadn't saved her marriage. And silence, at last, had reached its end. Mara arrived the way storms do, without warning, impossible to ignore. She wore red the first time Elaine met her. Not the soft kind of red meant to warm a room, but the sharp kind that demanded attention. Her smile was confident, practiced, and just a little too familiar for someone being introduced as a colleague. Nicholas didn't notice, or pretended not to. Elaine noticed everything. Mara laughed loudly at Nicholas's jokes. She touched his arm when she spoke. She positioned herself close, always close, as if space itself belonged to her. Elaine stood where she always had, one step back, watching a line quietly being crossed. At first, it was social. Mara began appearing at events Elaine once attended alone with her husband. Business dinners, charity galas, company retreats. People started assuming Mara was the one who understood Nicholas best, the one who matched his ambition, the one who belonged at his side. Elaine was slowly edited out of the picture. Then it became emotional. Nicholas stopped talking to Elaine about his day. When she asked questions, he said she wouldn't understand. When she offered concern, he accused her of doubting him. Meanwhile, Mara listened. At least that's what Nicholas believed. She praised him, mirrored his ego, told him everything he wanted to hear. Elaine could feel the shift in the house. Laughter that wasn't meant for her. Conversations that ended when she entered a room. Messages Nicholas guarded too carefully. He stayed out later. He came home colder. And when Elaine finally asked, quietly, carefully, he didn't deny it. He mocked her. "You're imagining things," he said. "You're insecure. You don't contribute anything, Elaine. You should be grateful I still come home." That was the first time he called her deadweight. After that, it became routine. Nicholas tightened control over money Elaine once managed freely. Accounts changed. Cards stopped working without explanation. When she asked, he reminded her it was his company and his money. Mara began making decisions Elaine used to make, what events Nicholas attended, who was invited to their home, even how the children spent their holidays. Mara didn't just take Elaine's place. She erased it. The insults stopped being private. At dinners, Nicholas joked about Elaine's simple mind. At gatherings, Mara corrected her openly, smiling as if it were helpful. Elaine became the punchline, The woman who didn't dress right, didn't speak up, didn't matter. And still Elaine endured, not because she believed she deserved it, but because she believed something could still be saved. Until Christmas Eve, the house was full that night. Relatives, colleagues, distant family members who only appeared when tradition demanded it. Lights glowed warmly. Carols played softly in the background, and children ran through the rooms laughing, unaware of the tension tightening the air. Mara was there, in red again. She moved through the house as if it belonged to her. She poured drinks. She directed conversations. She stood beside Nicholas when photos were taken, so close that Elaine was cropped out without anyone even noticing. Elaine felt invisible in her own home. Dinner was strained but polite. Elaine served quietly, as she always did. She avoided eye contact. She focused on the children. She told herself it would be over soon. Then Mara spoke, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Honestly, Nicholas," she said with a laugh, "I don't know how you've carried dead weight for this long. Some people just don't evolve." The room went silent. Elaine froze. Nicholas chuckled. That sound, soft, approving, cut deeper than any insult. Elaine looked at him, waiting for correction, waiting for defense, waiting for the man she married to remember who she was. He didn't. Mara stepped closer, her smile sharp. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," she continued. "She doesn't contribute. She doesn't belong in your world." Elaine opened her mouth to speak. She never got the chance. Mara's hand struck her face, hard, sudden, unmistakable. The sound echoed through the room. Gasps followed. Someone dropped a glass. A child whimpered. Elaine staggered back, shock rippling through her before pain even arrived. She tasted blood. Her vision blurred. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from disbelief. She turned to Nicholas. Surely now. Surely this was the line. Nicholas looked at her with irritation, not concern. "What did you do to provoke her?" he snapped. "You're always causing scenes." The room felt smaller, heavier. Elaine's children stared at her, confused and frightened. Relatives looked away, uncomfortable but silent. No one intervened. No one spoke up, and Nicholas blamed her. Something inside Elaine finally broke, but not the way breaking usually happens. There were no tears, no screams, no collapse. Instead, there was a quiet stillness. In that moment, Elaine understood something with absolute clarity. She could disappear entirely, and these people would step over her absence without pause. The slap didn't humiliate her. It woke her. She straightened slowly. She wiped the blood from her lip. She looked around the room, not as a victim, but as an observer seeing the truth for the first time. Mara wasn't powerful. Nicholas wasn't strong. And Elaine was no longer willing to be small. Without a word, she turned and walked away. She didn't run. She didn't look back. That night, while laughter resumed awkwardly behind her, Elaine closed the door to the study and locked it. She sat alone in the quiet, her face still burning, but her mind clearer than it had ever been. The years of silence, the years of patience, the years of restraint, they hadn't been wasted. They had prepared her, because the woman who walked out of that room was not the same woman who had walked in. And the next time Elaine Connor faced Nicholas, she would no longer be standing behind him. She would be standing in front. Elaine didn't wait for the morning. Before the first light of dawn crept through the blinds, she was already moving. Her children were still asleep, tucked beneath blankets that smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine from Christmas Eve. She kissed their foreheads softly, whispering promises of safety and love, careful not to wake Nicholas or anyone else. There was no screaming, no slamming doors, no dramatic confrontations. Elaine had learned that power didn't announce itself with noise. It whispered, it calculated, it waited, and now it was her turn. She packed only what was necessary: clothes for her children, essentials for herself, and the folder she had never touched until now. The folder containing decades of proof. Trust documents, legal authority, emails, ledgers, signed contracts, bank statements. Evidence that could expose the very man who had humiliated her in front of everyone. Elaine moved quietly, almost invisibly, like a shadow, through her own home. Her children slept through it all. unaware of the storm that had already passed. For them, the morning would be normal, warm, and loving, just as it should have been. Outside, a lawyer waited, briefcase in hand. Elaine handed over the documents, her face calm, controlled. She had prepared this day for months, maybe years, watching and waiting. Every insult, every public slight, every quiet dismissal had been meticulously recorded, not for revenge, but for justice. The investigation was swift. Company funds that had disappeared into Mara's accounts were traced. Payments that had been concealed from Elaine, in her capacity as the rightful beneficiary, were documented and accounted for. Misuse of resources, financial abuse, and secret favors were no longer whispers behind closed doors. They were evidence. Nicholas had built an empire on the illusion of control. Elaine had never doubted who truly held it. Her silence had been strategic. Her patience had been intentional. And now, the truth, once quiet, roared through spreadsheets, legal filings, and certified letters. She didn't call Mara out publicly. She didn't confront Nicholas at a board meeting with accusations that would humiliate him in front of colleagues. Instead, she let the system speak. Let the paper trail, painstakingly collected, do the talking. Lies, after all, leave traces. Lies always do. Every misstep Nicholas had made, every unethical decision he thought invisible, was now undeniable. The mistress who had overshadowed Elaine in social circles found herself irrelevant once again. Her access to wealth and influence blocked, her influence curtailed by documents and lawyers rather than confrontation. Elaine's departure was quiet, but it was calculated. While Nicholas and Mara remained oblivious in their world of appearances, Elaine secured what mattered: her children's future, her dignity, and a legacy her father had entrusted to her. She didn't need applause. She didn't need recognition. She didn't need to scream her triumph from rooftops. Instead, she let the truth rise on its own, like a tide. Slowly, inevitably, unmistakably. By the time Nicholas realized what had happened, the doors he thought he controlled had already closed behind him. He was exposed, not by Elaine's words, but by the evidence she had silently gathered over years. Elaine walked away with her children at her side, the weight of years of patience behind her and the promise of freedom ahead. She had learned something crucial. Silence isn't weakness. It can be armor. It can be strategy. And when combined with preparation, it can be more powerful than the loudest voice in the room. That morning, as the sun rose, Elaine smiled. Not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty. She had endured humiliation, betrayal, and invisibility, and yet she emerged unbroken, unshaken, and fully in control. Because sometimes the strongest actions are the ones you don't announce. Sometimes the most decisive moves are made while the world sleeps. And sometimes the woman who appears quiet is the one holding all the cards. Elaine Connor, once underestimated, had finally reclaimed her life. And nothing, not Mara, not Nicholas, not anyone, would ever make her doubt her power again. Nicholas Connor strode into the office with his usual swagger, a confident smile plastered across his face. He believed today would be just another routine meeting, a chance to assert control, to remind the board of his vision and leadership. He didn't notice the subtle tension in the air. He didn't hear the quiet exchanges of lawyers and executives who knew far more than he suspected. His access card beeped. Red. Confused, Nicholas tried again. Red. He waved it in front of the reader, muttering under his breath. The receptionist, looking uncharacteristically serious, shook her head. Sir, you'll have to wait. Wait. For him, that word was foreign. He glanced around, expecting a smirk, a technical error, maybe even a casual explanation. But no one offered reassurance. His arrogance, once his shield, felt strangely heavy on his shoulders. He looked up at the boardroom door, and then he saw her, Elaine Connor, walking calmly, confidently, in heels that clicked against the polished floor. She didn't rush. She didn't glance at him. Her expression was neutral, almost serene, but the authority radiating from her made the room shift. She carried no briefcase, just a tablet and a folder containing the culmination of years of preparation, patience, and observation. This wasn't Nicholas's house anymore. This wasn't his company. Elaine stepped into the boardroom as the door closed firmly behind her, leaving Nicholas on the other side, the card reader mocking him silently. Screens flickered on around the room. The board members looked to Elaine, expectant, waiting. Graphs, financial reports, and bank statements illuminated the walls. Each one was carefully highlighted, annotated, and verified. The misused funds. The secret payments to Mara. The transactions Nicholas assumed no one would notice. Then the video played. Christmas Eve. The dinner. The slap. Mara's laugh. Nicholas's words blaming Elaine. The children's confused faces. The room watched in silence. No commentary. No dramatics. Just the truth, captured in vivid clarity. Elaine didn't speak over it. She didn't scream. She didn't accuse. She let the evidence do the work. And as it unfolded, the board understood what she already knew. Nicholas Connor's power had been an illusion. The empire he bragged about building alone was always under her stewardship, safeguarded by the very trust he had ignored, mocked, and underestimated. When the video ended, Elaine turned to the board. This company, these assets, and this trust are under my control. All decisions, all authority, rest with me. Effective immediately. She didn't pause for applause. She didn't linger for shock. She simply waited as the weight of her words and the evidence settled. Nicholas's fists clenched at the other side of the glass. The realization hit him with a force no arrogance could deflect. The doors that had always opened for him, the power he assumed was his by charm and bravado, now refused him entry. For years, he had dismissed her as quiet, unassuming, inconsequential. But Elaine had been listening, watching, preparing. Every slight, every insult, every public humiliation had been quietly recorded, safeguarded, and now deployed with precision. And just like that, Nicholas Connor was no longer in control. Not of the company, not of his narrative, not of her. Elaine stepped forward, addressing the room with the calm authority that had been forged in years of silence. This isn't about revenge, she said softly, yet firmly. It's about accountability, integrity, and ensuring the legacy built by someone wiser than either of us continues without compromise. She looked toward the glass wall, where Nicholas still lingered, frozen and powerless. She didn't gloat. She didn't savor it. She simply turned back to the board, the rightful majority owner, the woman who had endured, observed, and finally acted. The door closed behind her, and this time, Nicholas was the one left outside. This was never a story about revenge. It was a story about patience, restraint, and the quiet strength that goes unnoticed until it is undeniable. Elaine didn't scream. She didn't confront him in public. She didn't beg for acknowledgement or respect. She observed. She documented. She prepared. She let lies leave traces, let arrogance reveal itself, and waited for the moment when truth could no longer be ignored. Nicholas believed power was about visibility, about ego, about being the loudest in the room. Elaine knew it was about responsibility, foresight, and unwavering clarity. And when the time came, she didn't take his voice. She reclaimed her life. She stepped into the light she had always earned. Final line, asterisk. Never confuse silence with weakness. Some people are quiet because they're holding the keys.